Marvel and DC need to use more characters, and we're going to tell you why. Marvel and DC have essentially been telling stories with the exact same stable of characters, with some variations here or there, for at least as long as I've been reading comics, which is 20 plus years at this point. And I got to tell you, I would love to see them shuffle the deck. And I feel like when I got in, and I know that's around when Tyler and Cale got in, that was happening. The Bendis run specifically, I think about at Marvel on Avengers, New Avengers, shuffled the deck in a major way. All of a sudden, you have characters like Daredevil and Spider Man and Spider Woman and Wolverine and the Sentry and Luke Cage being a part of these Avengers stories, whereas they really had never been before. There is another advantage to that. Not only does it freshen things up for the reader, but it also sets the stage for the future characters for these movies. You would think that now the incentive would be higher than ever for Marvel to play with some different characters, and yet I really don't feel like that's happening. So, what I want to talk about are some of the characters that Marvel needs to start utilizing and the reasons why we think they don't and how the books might suffer for that.
Well, I have thoughts on why they don't anymore, and it's because of the movies in a way. Um, there's a reason why our Avengers lineup kind of looks the same. It's looked the same since post Hickman. It has a Captain America in it, and Iron Man's in it, Thor's in it, and Captain Marvel's in it. Probably Black Panther too, because like that is just what the perception is of that team. Even before Bendis, you look at West Coast Avengers. That thing had Moon Knight on it. It had Firebird. Even before that, Moondragon was on the team. Star Fox. I have a list up here just so I'm fact checking myself. But it had weird characters like that, and I'm with you, Sean. Like if Marvel or even DC even threw in like a weird pick here and there to bring those characters up, I think that can only be beneficial for things that aren't just comic books. If I don't know, Speedball is palling around with Thor and Iron Man in the comics or in a cartoon show, maybe, then maybe he can get some name recognition to have a good TV show. And I know I said Speedball, maybe not Speedball, but like just that idea of helping push other characters up.
Well, the big thing is, you know, you have to treat these characters as individual personalities. And with each different individual personality is going to come a conflict. And that always leads to a different story.
Mm.
The problem is the big two don't want a different story. I always think of the first conversation we had with Ron V, and he absolutely blew our minds. But one thing he said that's always stuck with me is, you know, the common maxim with literature and writing is that there are 7 ways to tell a story. But that's not true, because there's an entire world of people out there telling stories. How could there possibly be only 7 ways to tell a story?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that the problem as it pertains to especially in event storytelling is the fact that the stories aren't character driven.
Yeah.
So the characters don't even matter. Like if you look at, let's say, Blood Hunt, strictly because it just came out, I actually liked it a lot. But that first issue, the only character that is necessary to be there is Blade. Like he's the only one who
Yeah.
you have to have in order for that story to be what it is. You could interchange pretty much, and Doctor Strange, but you could pretty much interchange anybody else and the story would be the same because it's not about them, it's about Blood Hunt.
You could change out Doctor Strange to another Sorcerer Supreme. Even
True.
Captain America, who like spoiler for it, is saved for it because he's an icon and he's a symbol. There's two caps you could have done that with. So like even that isn't character specific but more iconography specific.
Mm, If that's the case, then maybe I feel like it's also the majority of reader and the generation that they grew up in. My Superman, my Spider Man, my whatever. Because then, if it's so replaceable, surely there's a reason why certain characters stand the test of time in terms of the longevity of being on a team, and it's, well, that's what's familiar. That's what I grew up reading, and so because I grew up reading that, it I purchased based off of that, and I feel like we know that there's a large uh, there's a preference for selling to a built-in audience, and that built-in audience is of a generation.
I mean, you're absolutely indisputably right about that, except for the fact that we know that there are ways, like Luke Cage in 2005 wasn't a new character. He was an old character. So I'm not even talking about like a new character. I'm just talking about deck shuffling to bring some fresh faces, even if that face is 40 years old. And that's something that, yes, the big two want to make sure that they're putting their biggest characters that we care about the most in our faces. But I think that when we have seen attempts made to try to make other characters stars, they've had some success. I mean, Miss Marvel, and I'm talking, I should say Captain Marvel. I'm talking about Carol Danvers, right? When she was Miss Marvel, go back before 2006, nobody gave a damn. Then they started investing in her, and now she's on the Avengers versus Aliens cover. It's Cap, Iron Man, and Carol Danvers, not Thor and not the Hulk. And if
Yeah.
you go back 20 years, it definitely would have been one of them, or maybe both. So that's the effort that they put in, and we can see the result.
Even look at the first Avengers movie. Like Hawkeye and Black Widow were not founding Avengers, but they made the choice to have them in that version to push them for that. You know, Hawkeye, sure, proverbial Avenger since the '60s, but uh, if they make a choice to push a character, they can do it. It's doable. It just needs to want. They need to want to tell that story.
And I
Why
think,
would
go ahead, Kale.
why wouldn't they? Sales,
Sure,
you know.
sales, doing things differently. People get a little too stagnant and used to certain um, ideas and characters.
Hmm.
Look,
Any kind of risk is risky.
if I had a chance to write the Avengers, right? If Marvel gave me the pen and said write the Avengers, I'm gonna go to very specific characters that I like, and largely that's going to consist of characters that I read when I was young, when I was reading Avengers. So that's even if they give you the chance to choose. You might not even be able to choose. You look at the current roster of Avengers, and it's pretty much what makes sense. It's all the characters that are popular in the MCU right now, with basically no deviations from that I can think of. So that's the agenda. But you could pepper in even a Luke Cage, for example, the same way it was done, by Bendis. You could pepper that in. You could throw in a. I don't even want to make it a racial thing. It's not even. I'm not even trying to make it about that. Like you could throw in an Iron Fist. That could be compelling. Something different. Just something to mix it up. And when you're telling character-based stories, right, and not plot-driven stories, you get what Cale said. Cale said that you get the opportunity to mix the personalities up. And that's where the intrigue comes from. But Captain America and Iron Man have been having interactions for 40, 50 years. So I already get the point. If you're not going to do something different with them, then you need to bring someone different in.
And I don't know when we brought this up on the show. It was recent though. But like one of the issues that we have with current Avengers comics is that there's no soap opera. It's just the same characters punching.
Yeah.
And how much soap opera can you tell when these characters can't really change that much and the lineup is pretty strict.
Well, and not even that, but you also have to invest in these characters, even if they're the same ones. You have to have the opportunity to give them a chance to be a character and not just an action figure. Our problem with the current run, I'll speak for Sean and I, is that there's no the character interactions aren't believable, and it's all stuff we've seen before. They're not having real conversations.
And it's funny, like when I
Exactly.
think about like Avengers that I did like, I think of Uncanny Avengers, where it was a weird lineup. You had Wasp and Havoc on the team, but there was soap opera there, and there was weird characters that got to interact with each other who never had really interacted, and that was kind of the mandate of the book. It was X-Men and Avengers now teaming up, and then there was drama because of that. How many times do I have to hear Carol Danvers and Tony Stark argue about Civil War Two?
Hmm.
Like, it's the same stuff sometimes. So yeah, they definitely need to, not necessarily new characters, but new dynamics between characters.
New
Hmm.
blood.
New Bloods?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I remember when we had, Jane Foster become Thor and Sam Wilson became Cap, and all those things were changing. Obviously, a lot of people were upset by that. And I totally get why. I actually don't. I totally get why. But that was exciting because all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, it's not Thor that we're used to. So when Jane Foster's in a situation, how does she react to it in a way that just in my mind anyway, that justifies her existence? Like that justifies her being here versus Thor. If you're gonna do the exact same shit, why not just get the same guy? Why do I need a different guy, a different person? Just give me the same guy. When Sam Wilson became Captain America, they told stories that you can literally only tell with Sam Wilson being Cap and no other person. Why would I want anything less?
When Bendis added Spider-Man to the Avengers, that was the first time that it happened in the character's 70-year history. You know, the Avengers actually had to deal with the fact that Spider-Man does actually have his own rogues, and he considers them his, and he knows how to deal with them, you know?
And
And it
not
was
only that,
fun.
he had his own, side characters, his own family and friends.
Yeah.
Whereas traditionally, the Avengers, they were each other's family, really. Like they
And
lived together.
it was a massive conflict, and it was a massive piece of drama because Peter comes from, a lower, generally a lower class, uh, a lower class than most of the Avengers, Luke Cage
Janet Van Dyne.
notwithstanding. Janet, yeah. Um, so he had to bring them to the Avengers Tower to live.
One of my favorite moments is when he's speaking with, I believe it's Iron Man, and Iron Man tells him that there's pay, and he
There's
just gives
money.
him a
Yeah.
hug or whatever.
Man, I've never felt more seen.
Great moment, huge moment. But like Civil War II was mentioned earlier by Tyler. I don't care what anyone thinks about that event. The point I'm about to make is that in that event, Miles Morales was centered, and it made him feel like a bigger deal because all of a sudden this character is in the hot seat in a high profile event. So was Captain Marvel. That was the first time that those characters had been put in a position like that, and it made them feel like a big deal. So when you use characters that you don't normally see in those situations, it's like, oh shit, I got to think about this person. I felt that way with Nightwing in Dark Crisis.
Yep.
Obviously, they have not capitalized on that, but that's
Nope.
how it felt.
Yeah, the Titans still have not really been the preeminent team of the DC universe yet.
Nah.
Are there certain characters you think should be in those spots?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Dr. Fate was the one that comes to mind for me. I've been thinking about him through this whole conversation.
I mean, kind of a standout of the movie too, the Black Adam movie. Like
Yeah,
people I've talked to were like, "Yo, that Doctor Fate guy was cool."
absolutely.
In my mind, it always goes to Sam Alexander Nova. Like you got your young character, different power set than most of the Avengers. Carol kind of throws a wrench in there, but I just think one of those characters that would just print money, and I know how capitalist that sounds, but also like could just garner a good fan base.
I think doing things like, for example, putting Storm on the Avengers is a
Hmm.
nice attempt at deck shuffling. Not that Storm is not prominent, obviously she is, but this just gives us an opportunity to see some different interactions and stuff like that, which I like a lot. I think there are characters that have a lot of potential that they gave up on, like the Sentry. He's a ghost. I'm excited to see what they do with the Hood, bringing him back into the fold. He was a ghost for a long time. So that's a character that I want to see them do more with. And I think even if you look at villains, there are villains that can be dusted off and things can be done with them. These characters will just go away. It's like, well, what the heck happened to you? Marvel and DC literally probably have the most money making roster of characters, or the most familiar roster of characters in the world. I mean, compare like Marvel, DC, and then Disney, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and we see a fraction of them.
And they have the ability to make those characters, any character, really make them A tier,
Look at Loki.
S tier.
Like, I know Loki
Yeah.
for comic book fans is a big deal. Loki is a thirst trap magnet now. Like it's more than just a villain for the Avengers and Thor. Like, Loki is a property now because they put that investment into that character.
Guardians. Yeah.
The
Guardians, great.
please.
Yep.
Yep. Eternals.
But yet, when it comes time for, you know, a big event or a big story, where are the Guardians at? Like, where are they at? You know, that would be nice. That'd be kind of cool. The interactions that we got in Avengers Endgame between like all the deck shuffling that they did and showed us these well, it was Infinity War, excuse me. But all the deck shuffling they did to
love
show
that.
us those unique pairings, that's the kind of stuff that the comics can easily do.
It
I know
reminds
where
me-
you're gonna go.
Original
ahead.
Sin?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, Original Sin was that book. It was like, hey, Rocket Raccoon and Moon Knight are teaming up. Winter Soldier and who was it? But it was like weird picks. It might have been Gamora, actually. But it was weird picks and interactions you don't ever see. And that book was fun as hell. The Orb was the main villain too, and that's just a preference I like. But that's what I thought of when I was watching Infinity War. I'm like, oh, Nebula and Rocket are together. Okoye is, you know, leading a lot of the missions and stuff. I thought that was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie.
And the comics should be doing that. And it's not, I'm not saying that there needs to be like a Gamora #1, you know, but you can mix these characters up, you can mix and match, and let us just see something different. Let's see something new. What characters do you guys want to see interact that haven't, or that you haven't seen before? Like, there have to be fun interactions, there have to be exciting character pairings that Marvel and DC can show us that they haven't. So which ones do you guys want to see? Sound off in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.